Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar. Oh, I don't think I recorded that part. Okay, I guess I'll redo the intro. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8, and this is a book called Savage Worlds, called Codex Infernus. Here to be interesting for everyone to read. So let me. It's kind of awkward to sit like this. Okay. But yeah, figured this be a good book to read. Codex Infernus. Official Savage Worlds. The Savage Guide to Hell. A holy warrior fighting back infernal beasts on the precipice of a fiery pit. Cloaked figures chanting an incantation to bring forth a nameless beast. A man standing at a crossroads, bartering with a demonic temptress for fame and fortune, the price of which is his very soul. Advisors to kings and queens, dictators and presidents, whispering lies at the behest of their demon lords, with the fate of nations resting on whether or not the advice is heeded. A scientist examining a strange artifact found on a distant planet that, unbeknownst to him, opens a mysterious gate to a nightmare when a button is pushed. These are just a sampling of the myriad images which come to mind when we think of hell. Codex Infernus, Savage Guide to Hell, brings those images to life and shows you how to plug them into your games, regardless of what genre you love to play. In this book, you'll find ready-to-play character archetypes for fantasy and modern games, new fantasy races, new demonic races, new edges, and arcane backgrounds, guidelines for creating infernal weapons, guidelines for blessing weapons, even if you don't have an arcane background, an immersive fantasy campaign setting and detailed section of hell itself, guidelines for creating cults, a brief look at hell in various cultures stemming back to ancient Mesopotamia, rules for demonic pacts, demonic possession, and an optional corruption system, hellish hazards, a filled with demons, a gazetteer filled with demons you can use in your games. As you can see, it's a Gunmetal Games studio publishing. This is meant to be used in conjunction with, it's also, you see, Gunmetal Games again, meant to be mainly used in conjunction with Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, but you can use this however you want. Here we have a table of contents. We have the introduction, which features new races, the Book of Creation, which has character archetypes, new skills, edges and hindrances, the power of faith. Our next main section is the Book of Making. It's about dark priests, angelic weapons, demonic weapons, hell-forged weapons, and corruption. Next main section is the Book of Law, demonic pacts, demonic possession, exorcism, hell changes a man, they know you're here. Next main section is called the Book of Agaron, which is sort of a made-up area just for this book. Has in the beginning the first Magi, the Stone Gates, the Codex Infernus, the Grand Council, the Netherworld, the Darkened While, Agaron's Doom, Aftermath, an Uncertain Future, Agaron. The next main section is called the Book of Hell. The Augur, the Topology of Hell. Now, next one, main section, is more so in, all the religions. So the Book of Worlds, the Landscape of Fear, Sumerian, Zoroastrianism, the Cult of Osiris, Shol, Olympian, Hinduism, Buddhism, the Middle Kingdoms, Norse mythology, Africa, Islam, Oceania, Mesoamerica, the DMV, the Ultimate Hell, Hell in Your Game, new campaigns, Tonight We Game in Hell, a classic fantasy setting, a modern action setting, post-apocalyptic hell, Victorian hell, science fiction hell, cults, sample cult, final thoughts. The next main section is the Book of Legion, about hellish hazards, lesser demons, greater demons, demon lords, and other creatures. Then we have an index and backers. Now, as for the introduction, the Codex Infernus is a source book about hell, more than a gazetteer, though it's a book which gives you tools to create a variety of characters, some heroic, others evil. You can even play demonic and monstrous characters and We explore ways you can implement hell in existing campaign, regardless of genre. In this way, the Codex Infernus is also a toolkit. You can mine for ideas, creatures, gear, magic items, and use them in your own game. The subject matter in the Codex Infernus is not for the faint of heart. We discuss topics such as selling your soul, demonic possession, fictional gore, and other mature content. Then again, no one under the age of 18 should be watching this channel, whether it be the gameplay or me reading random stuff. Every video I put as not intended for children, so you have to be 18 years or older to hear me cuss about video games or read random books. So you have to be an adult to watch this channel. If you're not, then turn everything off, and you shouldn't be on YouTube until you're an adult anyway. The Book of Creation. The Codex Infernus offers new possibilities for characters you can play in nearly every genre you can think of, but especially modern and fantasy games. You'll find new races, the Cambion, Trolls, and the Varg, who are actually 3 sub-races. You also find a variety of character archetypes, which play off common tropes of both fantasy and modern games: wizards, rogues, demon hunters, etc. Next, you'll find edges and hindrances that reinforces some of the concepts of hell, a new arcane background, and a new professional edge. The Book of Making. You'll find guidelines for blessing objects, even if your character doesn't have an arcane background. The Book of Law. The setting rules you'll find in this book tackle a number of concepts familiar to any game dealing with hell and demons. You'll find rules for corruption, demonic pacts, demonic possession, and new power trappings. The Book of Agron. The sample fantasy campaign setting Codex Infernus. The Fall of Agron is a world where the forces of light have fallen to the forces of darkness. Agron is a point of conflict, focusing on areas in the world where characters are likely to find adventure. Future source books will expand on Agron and its denizens. Of course, no book on hell would be complete without a look at the infernal realm itself, the Book of Hell. We've created a fantasy version of hell you can use in your own homemade setting, or even modify to fit any published setting. The Book of Worlds. In the Game Master chapter, you'll find advice for creating cults, developing and running campaigns in a variety of genres, along with sample campaign events so you can create your own plot point campaigns. You also read about various myths of hell from cultures around the world. Finally, we give you advice you can use to craft your own personal hell. The Book of Legion. Demons, demons, demons. That's the theme of the bestiary. We provide a ton of new demons, ranging from lesser demons to the dreaded demon lords who vie for control of hell itself. The Book of Creation. The following chapter introduces a variety of races ready to play character archetypes and new edges and hindrances. The new races. The Codex Infernus introduces 3 new races to the Savage Worlds. Each race plays a role in our campaign setting. The Codex Infernus, the Fall of Agron, though you can easily port them into any other fantasy setting, and even modern fantasy and horror settings. The Cambion have their roots in the Judeo-Christian mythology. The earliest known references of the Cambion can be found in the infamous Malleus Maleficarum, otherwise known as the Hammer of the Witches, wherein the Cambion are described as the sterile offspring of the unholy union between a demon, specifically an incubus or succubus, and a human. In a modern setting, you can easily use these creatures to represent half-demon antagonists or heroes or anti-heroes in a gothic horror game reminiscent of movies like Constantine and the Prophecy. Actually, the actor for Wolverine was actually in one of those movies. Or even novels such as Monster Hunters International and especially the Dresden Files. TV shows such as Grimm or Supernatural are also good sources and inspiration. Cambion and Agron. Cambion are twisted creatures born not from sexual intercourse, but from the vile experiments of the defiled. The Moragrim are such creatures, having willfully submitted to the transformation in exchange for power. Until recently, Cambion served the forces of darkness as lesser commanders in Hell's army, spies sent to spread discord among humans and especially assassins targeting leaders of the resistance. Their fates changed with the assassination of Dead Lord Thiomox. In the Abyss, after the Dread Lord was slain, Cambion, specifically the Moragrim, were blamed for the act, even though no evidence was found tying them tying them to the Thyomox's death. They fled hell to escape certain death and torment at the hand of the Doom Speakers, who are obsessed with finding the Thyomox killer. However, fortunately, their ability to hide their demonic nature has helped the Cambion blend in among the humans they once persecuted. Cambion automatically qualify for shadow-touched edges, low light vision. Cambion eyes amplify low light. They can see in dark and ignore penalties for dim and dark lighting. Natural weapons. Claws. When in demon form, Cambion have claws which do strength plus d6 damage. Two faces. Cambion have a true form which represents their demonic heritage, and a human facade, which they use to mingle among the other humans. Their human form is always beautiful. Cambion enjoy +1 charisma bonus. When in demon form, Cambion enjoy a +1 to intimidation rolls. It takes an action to change from demonic form to human, or vice versa. Cambia suffer the usual penalties from multiple actions when transforming. Weakness, cold iron. Cambion take a +4 damage from cold iron weapons. Weakness, holy items. Cambion take +4 damage from weapons considered to be holy. Examples include holy water and any offensive powers used by characters or NPCs with miracle arcane backgrounds. Trolls. The troll is a creature from Norse and Scandinavian mythology and folklore, described as a large humanoid creature with bulbous eyes, bulging noses, tails, and hairy ears. Some legends refer to them as the Jotun, anglicized spelling. The giants in Norse mythology and fantasy, they are popularized in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, as well as J.K.R. Rowling's Harry Potter universe and other stories, such as the Three Billy Goats Gruff. The Codex Infernus incorporates these creatures as well as see the racial description below. In a modern fantasy setting, you might consider using trolls as monsters characters hunt. Or, if you wish to play a game reminiscent of TV shows like Grimm, you could introduce them as a player character race. Trolls and Agaron. The Yiska is a race of trolls unique to the Great Swamp of Sadanar. On average, the Yiska are taller and brawnier than humans, and their tough, molted skin constantly glistens with a fine film of slime. Naturally paled skin. The Yiskas spend so much time submerged in the swamp that their skin becomes stained by the dark, muddy waters and becomes disfigured by lumpy scars caused by gnawing of leashes and lamprey. It is the scarring that the humans mistake for warts. While the Yiska are humanoid in form, their features are disproportionate in size compared to the rest of their bodies. They have unusually large feet, very large hands, and while their heads are only very slightly oversized, the same cannot be said about their facial features. Large bulbous eyes and protruding heads, wide noses, flared nostrils, and wide mouths define the Yiska. Their ears have large, elongated lobes, which often focus on what passes as body art. Indeed, it is possible to identify which community the Yiska comes from by the styles of the braided flesh of the earlobes. The Yiska are constantly in conflict with their human neighbors, who regularly encroach on their territory and build on their sacred places. Due to a life of constant conflict and a condition known as the Vorgan Hex, the average lifespan of the Yiska is only 30 years. However, those that survive the Vorgan Hex are a naturally lifespan of nearly 100 years. Each of the Yiska carries with them what is known as the potential. Should they ever be struck by lightning during a storm and survive, their bodies slowly begin to undergo a great change. Exposure to further lightning fuels their growth and longevity, and if they survive long enough, they'll eventually become a troll king. Dehydration. The Yiska must spend 1 out of every 48 hours in fresh water or become automatically fatigued each day until they are incapacitated. The day after that, they perish. They have low light vision. The Yiska's large eyes allow them to see in the dark. Ignore penalties for dim or dark lighting. Regeneration slow. The Yiska make a natural healing roll once a day. The rough traveling, no medical attention, or rain conditions do not impose modifiers. Intense heat or cold impose a -2 modifier as normal. They are semi-aquatic. Gain a fatigue level every hour the Yiska remains submerged. On reaching incapacitated, must make a successful vigor roll every 15 minutes or drown. The fatigue recovers 1 level per 15 minutes back in the air. Stench of an outsider. Trolls not only carry the stink of the swamp, but they also the prejudice human folklore bestows upon them. When dealing with other races, the Yiska suffer a -4 charisma penalty. Tough. The Yiska are big and tough skin. They start with a D6 in vigor instead of a D4. The Varg. The Varg are a race of creatures exclusive to the Codex Infernus, the Fall of Agaron. Though with some work, you can introduce them in any campaign world, even modern and sci-fi settings you wish. You might consider using the Varg in a modern game where the types of creatures and others live side by side with humans, hiding their true natures using the Two Faces ability. In the cameo and description above, offset the ability with the outsider edge and you're good to go. In a sci-fi game, the Varg might be a new race of creatures inhabiting distant planets. The Varg and Agron. When humans began to spread across the face of Agron, they encountered strange creatures with both human and animal features, notably wolf, rat, and hawk. They named them the Varg, abominations, in the common tongue. Sadly, as it is with many things people don't understand, humans feared and hated the Varg, dividing them from their lands, driving them from their land in one of the worst periods of Agron's history, the Great Culling. The survivors fled north, raiding towns along the Kotaran and the Tiglagashian coastlines, where they stole ships and sailed into the frigid waters, eventually landing on the shores of a new land, never before seen by human or Varg, the darkened wild. Finally, having found a safe haven from those who hunted them, the Varg thrived in their new homeland, a vast primordial realm of unending forest, deep valleys, and tall mountains. The hills are intersected by roaring rivers and lakes. The years following the migration would see the Varg spread across the darkened wild, each subrace laying claim to a territory suited to their kind. Then came the defiled, and once more, with the exception of the Terok, see below, the Varg found themselves hunted and enslaved. Those who weren't used for food were given to the flesh renders for experimentation, where they were twisted into horrific monstrosities and sent back to Agron to serve as shock troops in the armies of hell. Years after the demonic conquest of Agron stalled, those Varg who remain free fight for control of the darkened wild, attacking the strongholds of the defiled wherever they might be found. On Agron, some of the Varg have escaped the armies of the defiled and seek to aid the humans who once persecuted them. Though these are few, and as old hatreds die hard, centuries later the Varg still remember the Great Culling. Most Varg keep to themselves and avoid human settlements entirely, though some eagerly seek to exact vengeance upon the humans who once drove them north. Though at this point, even their great-great-great-grandparents are the ones who did anything, so no one even has great-grandparents who even remember any of that. The Ulfang. The largest of the three races of the Varg subraces, these wolfish creatures are known for their ferocity in battle. Using both weapon and claw to devastate their opponents, their howls curdle the blood and cause even the most battle-hardened opponents to freeze in their tracks. Despite their ferocity in battle, the Ulfang are generally a noble race of creature who travel in large packs and live in dens deep in the forest. Of all the Varg and the Ulfang, suffer the worst at the hands of the defiled and humans who very nearly wipe them out. The Ulfang regard the Tarok with suspicion, if not outright hatred, for their alliance with the defiled. That said, they see the Tarok's continued persecution of the Riva as an example of the need to be strong in these trying times. Some of the more sympathetic Ulfang have been known to give the kin aid, but most prefer to let nature run its course. If the Riva survive, they survive. If not, perhaps it is for the best. Battle Roar. Once per encounter, the Ulfang can let out a blood-curdling roar, which causes opponents in medium burst template to make a spirit roll or become shaken. Fast. The Ulfang have a pace of 10. Loyal. The Ulfang will never abandon a member of their pack. This includes any character they deem worthy of their protection. Natural weapon claws. The Ulfang do strength plus d6 with their sharp claws. Primal intellect. The Ulfang are a savage race, not as intelligent as other Varg. Their smarts die requires 2 points per step to raise during character creation and 2 advances to raise the attribute during gameplay. Racial enemy. Humans. The Old Fangs suffer a -4 charisma penalty when dealing with humans. Superior strength. The Old Fang are incredibly strong. They begin with a D8 in strength and may increase their strength to D12 plus 2 via normal advancement. The Terok. Enigmatic is the best word to describe the Terok. Bipedal creatures similar to birds of prey who make their homes in the Arias Isles and the Mountains, the hills of the dark and wild, where they practice vile sorcery and plot to take control of the entire society of the dark and wild, and perhaps even Agaron itself. Of all the Varg, the Tarak are the cruelest. Even before the Great Culling, these creatures took great pleasure in inflicting pain and suffering on those they captured. Most scholars, and certainly the Old Thing, blame the Tarak for bringing the wrath of humans down on them. The years following their arrival in the dark and wild have seen the Tarak continuously expand their territory, while they are not strong enough to subdue the Old Thing, who fiercely defend their territory. The Tarak have enjoyed great success in their persecution of the smaller Ryva, who they hunt for food and sport. The Tarak are the only race of Varg who willingly sided with the Defiled, promising fealty in exchange for power. And even though the vast majority of the Defiled have since left the dark and wild, there is still a sizable force tasked with subduing the region, and the Tarak still maintain relations with them, sending their warlocks and warriors to serve both in the ranks of Agron and at home. Avian. The Terraks can fly at a base pace and may run as per the Savage World's monster's ability and have a climb of 0. Cruel. The Terraks delight in the suffering of others. Unless hunting for food, they prefer to take prisoners for torture and rather than kill the prey outright. If they are in a situation where they must kill their enemy, they do it in the most painful way they can. Damage rolls from general melee attacks never ace. Damage rolls from called shots and arcane powers can ace. Non-lethal damage can also ace. Eagle Eyes. Tarak enjoy a +2 bonus to their notice rolls involving sight. Frail. The Tarak tend to have a frail frame. They suffer a -1 toughness. Keen minds. The Tarak are extremely intelligent. They begin with a smarts of D8 and may raise it to a D12 plus 2 via normal advancement. Natural sorcerers. Tarak are gifted in the natural arcane arts. They start with an arcane background of their choice. Racial enemy, the Riva. The Riva. Tarak suffer a -4 charisma penalty when dealing with the Riva. Here's Riva. The Riva. The Riva, or kin, as they are commonly call themselves, are Varg who look to be bipedal rats, standing to be 3 to 4 feet tall in height. The kin are extremely reclusive, keeping to the isolated valleys and deep hollows of the dark and wild, away from the territory of the uncaring Ulfung and the vile Tarak who hunt them for food. At one time, the kin were a timid race of creatures, but no more. Since the arrival of the Defiled to the dark and wild, the kin have had to overcome their fears and fight for the continued survival or face extinction. Or worse yet, many Ryva have been taken from them and spread a strange wasting disease every time they bite or claw opponents. The Defiled use these monstrosities to hunt down the remaining Ryva or to send them on to Agron to bolster their forces. Hard to hit, the Ryva are adept at using their surroundings to avoid getting hit in combat. They begin play with the dodge edge. Keen hearing. The Ryva have +2 notice checks involving sound. Nimble. The Ryva are extremely agile. They begin with a D8 in agility, and may raise it to D12 plus 2 via normal advancement. Nocturnal. Ryva have the low light vision monstrous ability. They ignore penalties for dim and dark lighting. Racial enemy Tarak. The Ryva hate the vile Tarak and suffer a -4 charisma penalty when dealing with them. Small. The Ryva stand less than 4 feet tall. They suffer a -1 toughness. Additionally, the Ryva aren't as strong as the Varg. Their strength die requires 2 points per advancement to raise during character creation, and 2 advancements to raise the attribute during gameplay. Well, that's all we'll read for now. So, we'll read more next time. But until then, if I can get around the computer. Hope everyone had a good day and got to find the stop stream button. Bye.